independent pathway. Now, I actually don't like it, and you're going to see why. Technically, it does not require sunlight, but technically, I think it does. You'll see why in a bit. But for right now, I mean, officially, it is called the light independent pathway. More officially, the Calvin-Benson cycle. The Calvin-Benson cycle. So obviously named after Mr. Calvin and Mr. Benson. And this pathway is in the very same chloroplast, the very same place. Now this pathway, again, light independent, starts out with carbon dioxide. So we get our carbon dioxide right away. And the carbon dioxide is going to, well, basically join up with ribulose biphosphate. Ribulose biphosphate. And if you don't like that big term, RUBP is okay. You can use that. But ribulose biphosphate. Now, clearly, that's a molecule you've never seen before. I would be really shocked if you have. But even if you don't know what it is, you can still get some information just from the name. In fact, two pieces of information. What can you get from this? Pardon me? There are two phosphates. There are two phosphates. The biphosphate tells you two phosphates.
There's
What
sugar
else?
in
I was
it.
hearing somebody.
Sugar.
Yes, indeed, exactly right. Sugar. It's a sugar molecule. The OSE tells you sugar. And biphosphate, so even though it's a molecule you're not familiar with, you can at least tell it's a sugar with two phosphates. A lot of times you can get information like that just from the name. So the reason I'm mentioning that is to pay attention to it. You might get information you can use. Unfortunately, this is not one of those times. That information is not going to help you one bit.
I wrote it down.
Well, you did a very good job, too. But like I said, it might help. You just don't know. But any little piece of information, you don't know when it might be useful. In this case, it's not useful, but it might be. Okay, so what do you need to know? Well, know the name, and again, RUBP is okay. Also know 5 carbons. You were back to that again, counting the carbons. So carbon dioxide is going to merge with ribulose biphosphate, forming a 6-carbon molecule. Now, I'm sure there's a name. I don't know the name. I don't know the name. I don't care, because this 6-carbon molecule is going to split apart right away into 2 separate 3-carbon molecules. So again, I'm sure there is a name. I just don't know it, and don't worry about it. These 3-carbon molecules, these 2 separate 3-carbon molecules will change right away into 2 separate glyceraldehyde 3-phosphates.
2 separate.
Where have we seen that before?
In
Piero, you've been very quiet. I know you know the answer. Where have we seen that before?
Glycolysis, 5th step.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Glycolysis, the 5th step. I'll be a little more. I'll rephrase that. You got it right. It's right after the autolysis reaction. Right after the autolysis reaction in glycolysis, we get these 2 separate 3-carbon molecules. One changes into the other, and that's where we have 2 glyceraldehydes. So exactly. So in other words, this molecule here, or 2 molecules, this is the intersection point between photosynthesis and glycolysis. It's the intersection point between photosynthesis and glycolysis.
And you get two
Well, there are two of them.
you get two of them? Okay.
So essentially at this point, the whole process enters into glycolysis, and from that point, glycolysis will run backwards
I don't know how they skin this.
and form glucose.
This is crazy. How does it split into glyceride? Aldehyde.
Yes, I did. She is questioning me, and probably some, I'm fine. She's questioning me because when we were doing glycolysis, I told you at the time the autolysis reaction was the first significant reaction because either it was the first time we broke a carbon-carbon bond, but also it represented the point of no return. Because once we got the glyceraldehyde stuff, very, very hard to go back, very hard. It could be done, but it would require a lot of energy. Anything can be done if you have enough energy. But in most cases, it's not going to happen. Well, in this case, it does happen. So the reason it happens is we have lots of energy. The energy is available in photosynthesis, but not in glycolysis. Now, before I finish off that point, let me go somewhere else first, and then I'll come back to it. So let me put you on hold just for a little bit. We've got our carbon dioxide, we've got our glucose, but my question is, why do we need the first pathway? What's the connection between the first pathway and the second pathway? It looks like they're two separate pathways. Well, they are. But one's light independent, one's light dependent. So why does one need the other? Pardon me? Say that again? There you go. Perfect. You got it. This one is producing the energy that's going to be used over here. Let me rephrase this and so on. You got it. That's exactly what it is. We're making glucose. Now, in respiration, we were breaking glucose down. In breaking glucose down, how much ATP was released?
Wait, say that one more time?
38.
Oh, total.
Figurative. We're breaking down glucose. That's 38 ATP. So when we're going to make glucose, we've got to put energy in. You can't very well take energy out of glucose when you break it down unless you're putting energy in when you make it. So how many ATPs do we have to put in?
I was just kidding, sorry, that was very much something else.
She will be back here next year. 38 ATPs. Clearly, if we're taking 38 ATPs out, we have to put 38 ATPs in. So in making glucose, we're putting 38 ATPs in. Those 38 ATPs, that energy is coming from here. That's the connection. That the light-dependent pathway is essentially gathering energy from the sun and putting it into a form, meaning ATP and NADPH, putting it into a form that can then be used here to first push the glyceraldehyde thing backwards to glucose. We don't have that. We don't have that option. But the photosynthesis does because the sun has lots of energy. So first off, lots of energy being used to force the pathway backwards to glucose, kind of backwards as came from to start with. And then second, of course, to actually make glucose itself, you require 38 ATPs. The light-dependent pathway is providing that energy. And this is why, when I was saying a few minutes ago, that I really don't like this being called light-independent. Yeah, technically it is. You don't need the sun here. But like I say, if you don't have the energy coming from the sun over there, you're not going to make glucose. it's not gonna finish. So I'm, again, officially it's light independent, but I think you can see my hesitation on that. Looks like you're still thinking. You got a question? Even though they're separate pathways, but this is providing the energy in the form of ATP and NADPH. First off, to run the whole thing, but second, once you've gotten this far, to drive the glycolysis pathway backwards to form glucose. And then third, to make glucose. That alone takes 38 ATPs.
So how many times do you have to go to
Oh, forever. I mean,
to get to the?
I don't actually know. And see, just one ATP, so presumably, yeah, but the NADPH is also coming out. So I really can't give you a direct answer, to be honest, because some of the energy is being used to drive it backwards and this kind of thing, so.
What happens to the NADPH?
Well, it'll be used for energy. It'll be used for energy to do this.
Oh, no,
Oh,
it wasn't,
okay.
no, just,
Okay, well then a couple more things, and then believe it or not, we're done with photosynthesis. I mean, in its way, it could be every bit as complicated as respiration. We're not gonna do it that way, of course. But I think you can see the potential that people can spend a long time studying this kind of stuff. A couple things though. One is the enzyme right there that is combining carbon dioxide and ribulose biphosphate. That enzyme is ribulose biphosphate carboxylase, otherwise known as Rubisco. The reason I mentioned that to you, I didn't do any other enzymes. The reason I'm mentioning that to you is because some people think, I don't actually know, but I'm inclined to think it's true. Some people think that single molecule is the most common protein on the earth. It very well could be. There's a lot of photosynthesis. So like I say, I can't say really for sure, yes it is, but it very well could be. Now the second thing I want to throw at you is something you really haven't thought about much and you really don't care about it, but what the heck? What do the plants do for energy at night? At the night, not a lot of photosynthesis. There's no sun. So a rhetorical question, but just something people haven't really thought about. But basically, at night, there's no photosynthesis, there's no sun, so there's no light-dependent pathway, and therefore this isn't going to work either. So what do the plants do for energy? Well, actually, they do the same thing we do. They do respiration. They do respiration. And what that means is they have mitochondria just like we do. So further, what that means is that the plants have both chloroplasts and mitochondria. See, we do not. We just have mitochondria. But the plants have both. And the other photosynthetic organisms have both. So what that means is that the plant will photosynthesize, while the sun's out, but then at night when the sun goes down, they still need energy. So they will start using the glucose and using the oxygen that they produce in the daytime. So there's an obvious question. If they're making glucose in the daytime and then using it at night, and the same for oxygen, then how do we end up with any glucose? Well, the answer actually is that just like us, the plant's metabolism slows down at night. They're not dead, but their metabolic energy level is much slower at night than it is in the daytime. Just like us, when we go to sleep, our metabolism slows down. And so yes, the plants will be using oxygen, but not as much as they would have produced in the daytime. So here I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't know the numbers, but for example, let's say the plant produces 100 molecules of oxygen. Now clearly they make a lot more than that. 100 molecules of oxygen. And then at night, when they start respiring, then they will use up maybe 10. So there's a 90% production of oxygen, of glucose. So that's why we still end up with oxygen and glucose. The plant will use some, but not all of it. In fact, not even most of it. But they do respire, just like we do. That's why if you do have friends in the hospital, this is not like this. If you have friends in the hospital, if they're there for lung problems, emphysema, asthma, lung cancer, things like that, don't give them flowers. Because at night, those flowers are going to compete with them for the oxygen. And they're already having trouble breathing, that's why they're in there. And now you give them some competition. The hospitals hate that. So in fact, they'll take out the flowers. Now, if the guy's in there for broken leg, then that's okay. Give him a forest, it won't matter. But yeah, I mean, if he's there for breathing issues, don't give him flowers. Frankly, he probably would, if it's a guy, he'd probably rather have a box of candy anyhow. He doesn't need the flowers, but that's a different issue. But it is actually true though. Keep a little careful in what you give somebody in the hospital. So that's about it. One last little comment. The P680, the P700 I mentioned, that's at sea level. That's at sea level. There are lots of different chlorophylls, and it kind of depends on the environment. For example, something living at the top of a mountain. Well, there's going to be a lot more UV light that's going to hit the top of the mountain than down here. So probably the chlorophyll for that is going to be much more in the P400 range, P380, below 400. So that will absorb UV radiation. Ocean plants. For the ocean, a lot more of the red range goes down, the long waves. Penetrates the ocean better than the short waves. So those plants probably have a lot more of the P680 or P700 than elsewhere. So all I'm saying is 680, 700, that's common for sea level, but depending on environment, you definitely could have different chlorophylls. Okay, so if everybody's okay with photosynthesis, let me just erase this.